Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're very lucky to have two talks. The first is by Peter Langford and is about moving bees. And Peter started beekeeping in 2007 and he became a master beekeeper in 2022. And he supports beekeeping education in Suffolk. And he's very helpfully helping us out this evening to talk about moving bees. He'll take questions at the end of his talk. And then we'll move on to the second speaker. So over to you, Peter.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you just give me an indication you can see that?
I can see the presenter view.
Okay, no, that's lovely.
Do you want the other view showing?
The what, sorry?
I'm seeing your notes.
Are you? Oh, okay. Hang on then. Let me just stop sharing.
It worked perfectly 2 minutes before you all arrived.
Yeah, exactly.
Always the way.
Right, we'll try again. Right, how about that?
That's the PowerPoint view.
Okay, good. That'll do then. So thank you very much. Obviously, you know, I've got some beekeeping experience. And in terms of, you know, when do I move bees? So I've got an out apiary that I use for isolating swarms and queen rearing. And in the past, I have taken bees to try and get a heather crop. That's not going vast distances, you know, to the moors. We've got heathland around us, so I have tried to move bees there. I've moved the bees successfully, but in trying to get a heather crop off the local heathland has proved a bit of a challenge. So that's really what I've been asked to cover this evening. So looking at how you prepare that colony for a move to a different apiary, and then the differences really between moving a colony a short distance and then obviously looking at a more significant move if you were then going to go to a crop, and some of the sort of challenges that are involved. Obviously, you know, we're not looking at migratory beekeeping, or indeed the sorts of things that are practiced in the States where you've got huge lorries that are going through, obviously moving bees around for pollination. So that's what I'm going to cover tonight. When I did the general husbandry, and let's be honest, hopefully most of you are here to look at general husbandry, I was actually given this task on my general husbandry assessment, and I found it one of the easier ones to do, because actually you're not necessarily having to do much preparation for it, and as long as you've got the equipment and you know and you can talk about it, I found it a relatively simple task. So first off, so when are we going to have to move a colony, whether that's a nucleus or a full colony? So I've already mentioned this one. So if you've got a swarm of bees, you might want to take that swarm and rather than put them into your own apiary, you might want to use an out apiary to isolate the swarm whilst you can check them for a disease. So that's certainly one of the things that I would look to do. I did mention obviously going to get a crop of honey. If you've got a particular crop that you might want, so oilseed rape or borage or heather or something like that, or indeed you might be providing a pollination service, perhaps for, you know, an orchard or something like that, where you've got to move the colonies. I mentioned this one as well, so mating apiary. So for me, I've got another apiary that I use for mating, so I can obviously use that perhaps away from my hive, my apiary. It's also an advantage actually if you need to move a colony just to put out somewhere, you know, if they've gone queenless, that you can then add a queen to them, and you haven't got to worry about bees coming backwards and forwards. You might also do it for an aggressive colony. So if you've got to move a colony at short notice, it's causing a problem for neighbours. You can very quickly, obviously, move it out of the way whilst you requeen it. So again, a combination really of using it for mating, but obviously getting that aggressive colony out of harm's way. And certainly, if you're obviously acquiring bees, so you're a new beekeeper, you've got to think about setting up your apiary where you're going to acquire bees from and how you're going to get them there. Or indeed, you might have to change the apiary where you are in the course of your beekeeping experience. So obviously, when you come to move it, it does require some forethought and planning if it's going to be successful. So if you're planning it, what you need to think about is, what condition are you going to be moving the bees in? Have you got full colonies? Have you got nucleuses? And so really what I'm going to go through now is a few thoughts about when you're moving them, particularly when, the time of the year and the distances involved. So as a general rule, you should never move bees or a colony that have clustered for the winter. Once they've clustered, if you then try and move them and break that cluster up, they may not be able to recluster again. So the general rule of thumb is once the bees, when you get through to the autumn and you start getting that inclement weather, avoid moving the bees. The beekeeper saying less than 3 feet or more than 3 miles holds true. So if you are moving bees within your apiary, you need to move them at very short distances. And if you're moving them away, it then needs to be a lot more than 3 miles, so that obviously the bees aren't then looking for known or looking at the landscape, picking up notable navigation features and coming back to their original start point. And when you're looking at moving them in the apiary, if you've got hives that are very close together, certainly your first move to get them the hive separated. So if you've got 2 hives on a stand, you should only be moving them a very short distance. Otherwise, if you move them the full 3 feet, you might find that the returning bees are then going into one of the other or the neighbouring colony. Obviously, the same doesn't apply if you've got a swarm. So if you have a swarm, that memory is not necessarily applicable. So that actually you can move them to wherever you need to, and they will have a memory loss in terms of their recognizing the features in the landscape. So really for swarms, that's the one thing that the less than 3 feet or more than 3 miles doesn't apply to. So next I'm going to cover the sort of specialist equipment, and certainly if you are demonstrating this as part of your general husbandry, this is the sorts of additional equipment that you might need to think about. So you need to think about the destination. So obviously once you start that process of moving, you need to know where you're going, and ideally you have set the destination up to receive the full colony or the nucleus. And by that, it's have you got access to it, and have you got a hive stand that's readily available? If there's no water there, have you got water that's ready and available for that hive? The sorts of additional equipment that you might need. So straps, you're going to have to strap up and secure the hives. And there's 2 sorts of straps really. There's the top left one, generally sold by Thorns. I don't know whether there's a special name for it. And then you've got the ratchet strap on the right hand side. So you're going to need straps, and the recommendation is you require 2 straps for every colony that you are moving. Now, I accept if you're moving one of the polystyrene hives, or indeed just moving a polystyrene nuke box, they tend to slot together very, very well. And therefore you might look at it and you might feel that you can get away with one strap around it, but certainly for the assessment, 2 straps is what they're looking for. The next thing you need to think about is a travel screen. So the travel screen is available from most equipment suppliers, or indeed you can make your own with a couple of bits of wood, and then you can get some insect mesh that you can then just staple over the top. But you do need some sort of travel screen for each of the colonies that you are moving, and the purpose behind that is to allow ventilation through the hive so that the bees aren't overheating when they're stressed and being moved. You need to think about the entrance. Obviously, at some point during the procedure, you're going to have to block the entrance. Now, you can use an entrance block or foam or something like that, but you're going to need to be able to prevent the bees exiting the hive once they're all in. So again, something else that you need to think about. If you've got supers on the hive, you need to consider what you're going to do with the supers, and depending on why you're moving them, the colony may well dictate why you do or you don't have supers. So you could put a super on there to move it if you were going straight to obtain a honey crop from a particular crop of particular borage or something like that. In which case you could make sure that the super was full of drawn comb, but obviously each of the super frames has been spun, so it's got nothing in it, lightening the load. Or indeed, if you've got a very large colony with supers on and you don't want to move the supers, you may need to think about putting a super on the top just to allow sufficient space for the bees during the move to prevent them overheating. The other thing you might need to think about is how are you going to move them and whether you need any sort of assistance. So assistance could be a couple of other pairs of hands, or indeed if you're doing it yourself, you might need to think about a mechanical aid, wheelbarrow or a trolley. Two other things that you need to think about. So when you're moving them, you need to minimize vibrations. So the bees don't like vibrations, and any jolts or bumps are likely to be stressful for the colony. So when you are looking through the hive, and depending on whether you've got space in the hive once you've got the frames in, and then you've got a dummy board in there, if there's space in the hive that the dummy board and the frames may separate, you might need to wedge them to prevent the frames moving around. And certainly when you're looking at the route you're using to go to your new destination, you need to think about whether it's over a rough track or whether actually you can pick some smoother terrain to get there. The main thing when you're moving it is to avoid overheating. So the bees will become stressed and agitated during the move, particularly if they're confined during the day. So very quickly, they can generate some heat. So when you're thinking about the move, you need to think about whether you are doing it at night time once all the flying bees are back, or whether actually if you've got to do it during the day, you've got to minimize the heat that might build up. So if they're in direct sunlight in a car, you might need to protect them to avoid the sunlight going on them. And that's one of the reasons why we have that travel screen, because it allows air to be circulating through the hive. And if you've got a longer move to do, you can always give them a spray of water, give the colony a spray of water to help them cool down. So we're now going to look at the preparation that's required. So the first thing you've got to do is secure the hive. So during the day, you need to go through the hive, make sure it's in the condition that you're going to move it in. So I mentioned, obviously, if you're going to pollination or to get a crop of honey, or indeed you're moving it for means of mating, you clearly need to make sure it's queen right. I talked about going through and making sure, depending on the number of frames you've got and the dummy board, if there's any chance that the dummy board and the frames can work their way loose, what you need to do is wedge it to prevent the frames from separating. And that could be just another piece of foam, or indeed if you've got, and I run a frame less in my hives, if I put another frame in and with a dummy board, I know that completes the hive. Obviously, if you've got a polynuke or something like that, I've already mentioned that they fit together quite well, but you still need to think about whether you're going to wedge the hives or not. Depending on where or when you're moving and how far you're moving, but certainly for the assessment, you need to think about a travel screen. So once you've gone through the hive, you need to lift the hive up. You need to lift the hive, put the straps underneath, place the travel screen on the top, and then tighten the straps up. And you'll notice the two straps there that are obviously positioned around the side. So they're not, one's around the side and one's front to back. They're both around from side to side, which prevents the hive from and the screen from twisting. I mentioned obviously if you've got poly hives, clearly some of them are designed to be moved. So obviously there is an advantage to some of them, but certainly I would recommend that you strap them, and for the general husbandry assessment, you are being looked at to make sure that you have strapped them correctly. When you're strapping them, if you've got a tensioner or the buckle, ideally that should be at the side rather than on the top, just to make sure that it's more secure. Once, and that's during the day, once the bees have then returned in the evening or at night, you can then position the entrance block, and you are then good to go. Once the bees have come back, you can start thinking about the move. If you have to move the bees during the day, and you've got the foragers that are out, clearly you've got to block the entrance and then move the hive, but you need to leave something there, whether that's a super or whether it's a nuke box or something else, to collect the bees as they return, and then you can always pick up the stragglers later on and then take them to your other apiary to add them to the colony. So we've prepared it, we're ready to move. All the bees have come back. We're happy that obviously when we're doing the move, we've got the ventilation screen in place, and we've got the entrance block in. So the next thing we need to think about is the loading and the transport. So when we're moving the hives, we should have the frames running in the direction of travel. And to do that means that obviously when you're the vibrations and when you're going around the corners, hopefully you're minimizing the amount that those frames can swing. So that's something that you need to think about in terms of space, whether you've got enough space that you can load the colonies or the hives so that you've got them all running in the same direction. You're going to need to think about securing the load. So some people would advocate that you use the roof, you stand the hive in the roof, so obviously that acts or prevents them sliding around. Whenever I've moved mine, I found that really difficult because you've then got to try and get them out of the roof, and I just find it you can't get your fingers around it. So I certainly don't put mine in the roof because it just takes up more space. But you need to think about how you're securing the hives to prevent them moving around. Once you're off and running, depending on how far you're going, you do need to have regular checks, and that's both to make sure that the hives haven't moved, haven't separated, are still secure, and obviously if you are moving them some distance, you need to think about misting. I mentioned if you're moving them during the day, it's a good idea to have a Hessian screen because that will keep the bees a bit cooler and block out some of the sunlight, particularly if you're moving a long distance. When you arrive at your destination, you've got to think about unloading. So the bees, or we all know that the colonies are heavy. So once you've got to your location, hopefully you can get the transport as close to the hive stands or your new apiary as possible. But if you can't, you've got to think about how you're moving them around. And so, you know, I mentioned mechanical transport. If you haven't got mechanical transport there, that's yet something else that you've got to think about and take with you when you're planning your move. So you've positioned the hive where you want it in the apiary, hopefully on a hive stand. You can then remove the straps. You might decide that actually you're going to leave it strapped until the following day. But if you arrive there and you want to replace the roof, then you need to take the straps off. And you can think about, obviously, if you or I would recommend that you don't remove the travel screen. So you leave the travel screen in place unless you need to put supers on there. The problem is if you take the travel screen off, the bees are going to boil out. They've obviously been cooped up inside the hive. And so there is a risk, you know, you're going to end up with colonies all over the place. So unless you desperately need to remove the travel screen, leave the travel screen on. Once you've got all the hives positioned, that's the point when you can then go along and remove the entrance blocks. If you start taking the entrance blocks out when you've still got hives to position, again, as the bees come out and start their orientation flights, you're going to end up with a lot of bees flying around. And clearly, if you're still trying to move hives, you will be in the way. So recommendation there, obviously unload them, unload the straps, make sure everything's all right. Once you've got them all positioned, remove the entrance box and then return the following day. That's when you can then check the hive. You can remove any of the internal wedges that you've used to keep the frame secure, and you can replace the travel screen with the crown board. And obviously add any supers as necessary. So just a final couple of thoughts. So obviously a colony of bees is heavy. So certainly when you are thinking about moving them, I would advocate you get help. Certainly if you've got mechanical means, that's fine. But actually just trying to move them around in the car is quite difficult. I mentioned the return foragers. So, you know, if you are moving them, do think about during the day. Certainly you need to think about how you're going to collect those returning foragers to make sure that you can then unite them with the colony. It's probably a good idea to wear a bee suit and gloves when you're moving them in the car. You never know, whilst you may well have strapped them down. Certainly, my experience is you're never going to strap them completely, and sometimes you know, you may have an entrance block that works, or the bits of foam that works its way out, or indeed, if you haven't strapped them, you know, one of the ventilation screens might move. So certainly, if you've got your bee suit on and you've got gloves on, you're then prepared for it. You probably need a water spray and tape handy. Obviously, you can't really drive along with the smoker lit, but if you've got a spray water bottle and tape, certainly the tape, you can rapidly make some repairs or close up an entrance that's come open. And certainly with the spray of water, that will keep the bees hopefully down and prevent them from flying around in the car. You never know, obviously, when you're going to have a problem. And so if you're prepared ahead of time, then hopefully you will have a successful move. There is and presumably the presentation is available afterwards on the website. The Norfolk Honey Company so Stuart Spinks, who runs it, has a YouTube clip there of how to prepare a hive for moving and talks through, you know, where to put the straps and everything else. I think given the time, and we're going to do questions at the end of it, I won't play the video now, but that's certainly, I would recommend you having a look at that in slower time. So that's it. If there's any questions now.
Thanks, Peter. That's absolutely excellent. We will make sure we add the YouTube link into the resource list for this segment on the GH26 materials.
Okay.
Julian's got a question. Do you need a travel screen if they have a ventilated floor?
Yes. I've got ventilated, I've got mesh floors on mine, and certainly I would recommend that you have a travel screen. Again, it depends on how far I think you're going to be moving them. If you're only moving them just over 3 miles, then no, you probably don't need a travel screen because they're not going to overheat, particularly if you're moving them at night. If you are going to move them any distance, certainly if you are taking the bees to to the heather, and you've got a couple of hours, then yes, you definitely need a travel screen, because you're going to need to monitor what's going on, and you're going to need to be able to mist them to keep them cool. I think for the general husbandry, they are certainly expecting you to have a travel screen, so that you can obviously fit it, and strap it down.
Thank you. I know my association, Lancashire, has some for borrowing, because lots of people don't actually move their hives. So you can borrow a travel screen just for your GH. And obviously, if you actually needed to move hives a distance. Right, Izzy's got her hand up. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, Peter. You mentioned when you're strapping them up, put the tensioner or the buckle at the side, it's more secure. Your picture showed it on the top, so I'm a bit confused. Why is it more secure at the side?
So I didn't. I'm not making an excuse here. I didn't. They're not my pictures there. I think it's more secure at the side because you can get more tension on it. Obviously, if it's on the top, you risk, depending on how the travel screen is made, but you risk bending the travel screen. Whereas if it's round the side, you've got the solid hive to tension it against.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Thank you. Someone called Robinson doesn't have a camera on, or there we go, unmuting.
Yes. Just one thing, I'm trying to share the video. What happens if you have to move a hive that's not very pleasant, but has about 3 supers on the top? And there's a lot of bees in there. I was
You're
thinking
talking about an aggressive colony.
yeah, it's you can drive them down into one super, but that's not going to be very pleasant.
So I would probably do a couple of moves within the apiary beforehand. There is a procedure for dealing with an aggressive colony where you are going to move, in effect, move the colony to bleed the foraging bees off.
Right.
So the foraging, you could potentially take the supers off, put them onto an entrance, leave those there for the returning foragers, move the colony off to one side during the day, wait for any other foragers to leave, so you've minimized the number of bees that you've got in the hive. Then you can obviously strap that hive down, and then move it. The foragers, you've reduced the number of bees in the hive. You're not moving the supers. You've then allowed the foragers to fly out and then come back to the supers. They've got a floor in so they can come in there. And you can take that hive away, hopefully requeen it or sort it out, because it's obviously an aggressive hive in your new apiary, and then bring it back. And then you can either reassemble the hive as it was, and hopefully by requeening it, you've made it less aggressive, or you could transfer those supers onto another hive if need be.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, is that another question? Right. If you're removing the hive with supers on, is it best practice to move the brood box and supers separately as one, a non-aggressive colony, say with 3 supers?
I don't think you're going to lift a colony with 3 supers on. So when I was talking about the supers, so if you've got a very large colony with lots of supers on, you might want to take the supers off because you're never going to lift it. But because there will be so many bees, you might need to think about putting a super on the top to give them additional space, just to make sure that the colony doesn't overheat, because you're going to have a lot of bees. But you would put a empty super, I say an empty super, you would put a super on with frames of foundation, with drawn comb in them, so that they are, you haven't got any weight in there in terms of honey or stores. And if you are obviously using that colony to go to a crop that you're going to harvest, you have then already got a super on for when they start flying at your new location. But I certainly wouldn't recommend moving hives with full supers on, because it's just too heavy.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Peter? No, I think you've answered everything in your talk. So thank you very much, Peter.
No, thank you.
Absolutely lovely. Thank you. Right, we will have our second speaker now, and that's Kate Brennan, who's going to talk to us about record keeping. Kate's also a master beekeeper, and she's actually a member of Cleveland Beekeeping Association and keeps bees at the edge of the North Yorks Moors. She's been keeping bees for a little over 10 years, but it's something she's always wanted to do, and she's actually joining us from her holiday. So thank you very much, Kate. Over to you.
Lovely to see you. I'm just about to share my screen. Why can I not find it? There we are. I'll just get this sorted, and then I will be all words. Right, can you tell me what you can see?
Just people at the moment.
Just people, right?
Yeah.
Let's have another go.
And as before, it all worked perfectly before you lot got here.
Absolutely, yes.
There we go. That looks like we're starting to screen share.
Screen sharing.
That's the notes.
Right.
There we go. Lovely.
And we're there. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Right. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to be spending the next 30 minutes or so talking about record keeping in beekeeping at a suitable standard for you lovely potential general husbandry candidates. I'm happy to take questions at the end, and like we did with Peter, if you want to make notes in the margins on Zoom, we can have a look at them then. So what I'm going to cover this evening are the different types of records that I keep. 4 different aspects of my beekeeping require records, in my opinion, and they're also going to work as a very important reference material in a general husbandry assessment. The good thing about thinking about these now is there's something that you can prepare way in advance. With the general husbandry, so many things at the last minute. It's like spinning plates. How many colonies have you got that are queen right, that are productive, and blah, blah, blah. These, once you get your records sorted, you can continue with that and think, yes, I've got that in the bag. And they also provide you with solid evidence to your assessors that you know what you're doing most of the time. You're going to be showing your assessors at least a year's historical records. So they're going to be able to see the path that you have followed over that time. The other thing that's quite interesting about record keeping is that rarely, until tonight anyway, has it been the most exciting of beekeeping topics. We all want to know about swarms and the one that nearly got away, but I realised that I didn't know very much at all about how my fellow beekeepers kept records until I started preparing for this talk. So a little more of that later. So we've got 4 different sorts of records, and the main one that you think about when you think about record keeping as a beekeeper are your hive inspection records. And I would argue that these are as useful to a beekeeper as a smoker and a hive tool. It's the 3 things that that you take with you when you go in to look at your bees. And I'm going to be discussing them in some detail. And your assessors are going to want to have a look at these records before you head out for the practical element of your assessment. So that's first record. Second record is your Veterinary Medicines Directorate, VMD, records. If you're not a treatment-free beekeeper, you'll have them. So just make sure they are accessible and up to date. Record 2. Record 3, honey production records. It's not a major part of your records for general husbandry, but it is a very important record of you as a food producer, producing honey as a foodstuff. You've got that traceability and you're showing the provenance. So that's record number 3. And record number 4 particularly comes into its own when you're covering queen rearing. And I know you'll be covering that in other sessions, if you haven't already covered them in this general husbandry training session. And for me, these records show the why you are choosing those particular queens to breed from, rather than the nitty-gritty of cutting bits of wax and blah, 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 and what you're going to do and the angle you're going to put it on, and are you punch selling or grafting? It's the why. So 4 different types of records, and that's what we're going to think about. Right. The first and the major record that I want to talk about is your hive inspection records. And I fully expect that all of you keep hive records. And I put this together for some of our newer beekeepers. And it really acts as a very effective aide-memoire as to what you need to look for. And you can make a record of what you find and what you did. And it's an opportunity to put down your thoughts on paper and plan for next time. And if you get it on paper, you're more likely to do it. And have the right gear in stock. So that is the why. When do you do it? Well, memory is a funny old thing, isn't it? And accurate records are invaluable. As I keep on saying, you've got your hive tool, you've got your smoker, you've got your records, hive records. And I try and make myself complete my notes of my inspections as soon as possible, either during the inspection, or I make notes in a notebook and write them up properly with a cup of tea when I'm back at the house and reflecting on what has been going on and what extraordinary things the bees have done in their boxes today. Right, so I've mentioned, have I mentioned spreadsheets? I've mentioned notebooks. And then I thought, well, how do beekeepers keep their notes? The wonderful BBKA, ever kind and supportive, have a template hive recording notes, and this QR code will take you to that. Great template, and you can use it as it stands, or you can adapt it, which is what I appear to have done some years ago. This is one of my spreadsheets. I have one for each hive, and it follows one colony for the life of the queen. I give each mated queen a number. I've got some stickers, which I use to mark the colour of that queen. It's easy enough to print off more pages and tweak the columns in the spreadsheet if I'm not quite happy with how much space I'm giving to things, and I just staple the new sheet to the front. I can easily look through these sheets at home, and they don't run low on battery. So this is particularly the system that I use, but not all. There are many other ways, methods available. Let's just have a little look. I did start asking other beekeepers, and one very experienced beekeeper in our association has this little notebook. He's he hasn't done the general husbandry. He knows what he's written, and it's his own special code. But you can use that. But I will, with just saying one thing about making sure the general husbandry, your notes need to be a little bit better than just for you. Also, there are a huge range of hive notes, logbooks available. I asked Auntie Google, and she provided at least a dozen different notebooks, even a gilded one. So you pays your money, takes your choice. But it's all an adaptation of the similar things that are presented by the lovely template that BeeBase have. And then, do you prefer a bit of tech? There are lots of options. I've been to a very interesting talk about a beekeeping app, and I've discovered about over a dozen different apps, which I must admit I haven't researched further, and a lot of people use those. So I thought, wow, there's so many different ways of doing this. What do people in our association do? And it's a mixture of very keen beekeepers, some quite young. I think the profile is quite young. I asked on our WhatsApp group and got about 60 responses from different beekeepers. And I was very interested to hear this, because as I say, it's not something that we tend to talk about as beekeepers. And you can see from the responses that people chose a number of different methods. So these are all beekeepers that have had at least a year's beekeeping experience under their belt, and the vast majority keep paper notes. So out of 60, we had 18 plus 40, so yes. So over 50, about 50%, over 50% had kept, of the people that answered, kept paper notes. So I think that's quite telling, actually, that when folk are with their bees, it's only a small poll of beekeepers, but they relish the opportunity to step away from the tech for a bit, and everybody did keep notes. The other thing I asked them was where they kept them. And again, the vast majority, some people had them electronically. There's the story about keeping them under the hive roof. Nobody did that. Most people kept them at home where they could access them. So I thought that was quite interesting. So what we need to think about now is, normally your hive inspection records are for you as a beekeeper to support you in your beekeeping endeavours. For general husbandry, they're also for your assessors. So you need to make sure when they come to your beekeeping party in 2026, make sure that they too can access them, that they can read them, that your writing is legible, that it's not on a tiny app that they have to get extra strong readers to look at. Just make it easy for yourself and make it easy for the assessors. And it's your chance to show off your thought processes around your beekeeping, your process and procedures that you follow, and show that you are a lovely, rigorous beekeeping that takes good notes and is mindful of the next stages in your colony's development. So this, I think, is of particular benefit to newer beekeepers, but I would hope that that all of us are aware of the checklist of what we look for. 6 things that we need to look for when we go through a normal hive inspection. The queen, is she there? Her presence, if we see her, maybe we just see eggs. What state is she in? Is she laying? Is she marked? Is she clipped? Make a note of that. Queen cells, what did you do? Oh, was this the colony that produced queen cells last week? What did you do then? It's time for action. Record what you did. And then you've got that record going back. Excuse me. Coming to brood, we're looking at the quantity of brood, the number of frames that have eggs, larvae, and pupa. So there's a easy shortcut, so you can see the week by week development and the expansion of your colony. The quality, this comes down to looking at bee health, making sure that you flag up on your hive notes that you're carrying out regular health inspections. So if you see sac brood, write it down there, because I know that I saw sac brood somewhere last week, but can't remember which box it was in, unless I write it on my notes. So it's prompting you to make a qualitative assessment of the brood and the brood pattern. Stores. Does your colony have sufficient stores to get through the week? Think about the nectar and honey and the pollen. How many frames does this cover? And this can be invariable if you've just taken your super of lovely oilseed rape honey off, and the weather changes, and then your teeming box of bees are confined to the hive when the next storm, whatever it is, I think it might be Floris, comes to town. So that's something that you need to be aware of and have a record of without having to go through your hive in person and have a look. And also varroa. So we're making a note there of levels of infestation, either estimating that from natural mite drop, from drone brood culling, or from a sugar roll. I think these are things that hopefully we will all record, and we will date each entry in our hive record. What did I see? And what didn't I see? Is there space? Is there space for the colony to expand over the week ahead? Are there cells ready for the queen to lay in? So that's all about physical things. And then we'll move on to other things that you might need to put in. It's very useful to make a note of your bee's temperament. Many people use a scoring system for this. I use 1 to 5. I struggle to give many bees a 1, because I think that, you know, they're working very hard, but it's down to your individual. You know what a 2 is, and you know what a 4 is. So as long as you're using the same measuring system across your colonies, that's fine. And the temperament of a colony, as we know, can change from week to week, down to the weather. So make a note of that on your hive notes, and it does make a huge difference. Can make a huge difference in temperament. Have you added feed? What sort? How much? We've got fondant on there. Have we got syrups? Have you put a super on? Do you need a super next time? Have you treated for pests and diseases? And so you're going to put a little note there on your hive record, and more of that in a little while. This is an awful lot to fill in a single column. So there are common acronyms which many beekeepers use. Your assessors are going to be very experienced beekeepers, of course, and will understand the common shorthand terms. So BIS, brood in all stages, queen cell, QC, queen excluder, QMC, queen marked and clipped. I do a shorthand to show the structure of my hive. So B for brood box, X for queen excluder, and then a super and a super. That's all fairly self-explanatory, and it can save you time and space when you're completing your hive records. Anything more? Well, to be honest, your hive records are yours, and you can make space for anything that really brings you joy in beekeeping. It's not necessarily for the general husbandry, but I think it's important to recognise this, noticing the changes in the seasons, when the heather's coming into bloom, or the first swallow. So I like to give myself a little bit of blank space just for the fluffy bits in my hive records. And finally, how do you link the record with the colony? Is it the blue hive box notes? Is it the yellow hive box notes? Do you give your queen a number? Do you give her a name? Are you of a classically educated persuasion, and you decide you want to go along that route? Doesn't matter, but as long as you can identify the queen and look at the story of her life through your hive records. In my opinion, the record should stay with the queen, not the blue box or the yellow box, as it is the queen who determines the colony's traits. Are they hygienic? Are they inveterate propolisers? Are they calm on the comb? Are they thrifty? All of this comes from the queen's traits. So it makes sense that the records stay and follow that queen. And one last thing, I think it's one last thing about your hive records. Yes. As the program says, location, location, location. In this case, I use what 3 words on the outside of my hive notes to identify the location of the apiary. That's good for other beekeepers if I need help, or perish the thought, even the emergency services. And it's good practice, so pop that down there. Second, and something that is covered and is required by the general husbandry, is to include a simple apiary map. This is a very inelegant map that I've drawn up, and it just shows the rough layout of the apiary and the locations that are populated by bees and the hive numbers that are relevant. So I can look at my hive records before I go out and work out, right, that one and that one I'm going to be taking supers off. This location and that location, I'm going to have to do a little bit of other manipulations. It just helps to get a picture in your mind before you head out to your bees, and it's going to help your general husbandry assessors think, right, okay, hive Geraldine, we'll go and have a look at her colony, and you can see where it is on the map. And I also use this to make a note, because it's sort of it's a rough freehand. If there's a little space in there, I can put plans for work in the apiary, any repairs I need, or any short-term queen rearing timing. That's something that you can pop in there. And finally, location. Just keep your hive notes safe. Unlike a hive tool or a smoker, you cannot buy a good set of hive notes from thorns. So keep them in a safe place, away from where they're going to be eaten by snails, maybe, so not under a hive roof, which no one in my association does, and away from the inveterate recyclers in our house. So that is hive inspection records for you, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the major part of record keeping. 3 other ones I'm going to cover in shorter detail. We've got the Veterinary Medicines Directorate, VMD records. So if you are not a treatment-free beekeeper, you will have these. Make sure that they are accessible and up to date. There we are. Hands up, who's got one of those? Hands raised all round. Lovely. This is a legal requirement if you administer veterinary medicine to any food-producing animals. Do you treat your bees for varroa? Very probably. This form is available on BeeBase and it's very simple to fill out. Although I'm sure there are other ways of getting this, completing this information and saving it. Beekeepers required to keep a record of the purchase of any veterinary medicines, the record of usage, and a record of disposal. And you keep this for 5 years. So you buy one type of veterinary medicine from Thorns or a Beelo, you fill out one form. And that's one half of the form. The second half of the form is you complete at the time of administration. It's very straightforward and you keep it for 5 years. We'll just say this. Cheaper items may be available from Mr. Bezos. Are they listed on BeeBase as a registered product? If not, then you really don't have any provenance for what is an unlicensed drug. Would you give it to your nearest and dearest? Of course you wouldn't. So don't give it to your bees or vicariously to your honey customers. So there we are. That is all I have to say about veterinary medicines. But as long as you've got your records there, the other person that was interested in seeing my veterinary medicines was when I did my food hygiene inspection with the environmental health, and they were interested. They didn't comb through the records, but they were interested to see that I kept them. So record 1, record 2, record 3, quite straightforward now. We're on a home run honey production records. This is something that you're also required as part of your general husbandry to show products of your honey and a little bit about your how you ensure that your honey is of proven provenance. And it's a very important record as a beekeeper producing honey as a foodstuff. Very simple, very low tech, lovely little book. And each page has a date for each lot of honey. So honey is a foodstuff, traceability is key, and your batch number should be related to your hive numbers. And these can then be cross-referenced against your veterinary medicines records. So for each batch of honey, you will be able to link back through to show any medicines which may reside residually within that colony, although of course you won't have any supers on during treatments. So I show the following details. I show the date the super's removed, from which hive, the honey type. Where I live, this is very important. Honey from oilseed rape that sets like concrete is very different from ling, although the bees will, in a good year, forage on both of them from my garden. I also make a note of the moisture content, as we know, a vital statistic. And finally, at the bottom of the page, the job well done weigh-in when it's safely in buckets. And finally, queen records. So you're going to be covering different methods of queen rearing, and hopefully your queen rearing will go like a dream next year, or whenever you decide to do if and when you decide to do the assessment. And you will have the methodology for the procedure that you're going to be using. My queen records show the why and the who rather than the what. So where are they? Here we are. It's a bit like the edited highlights of your hive notes. It's the good, the bad, and the occasionally ugly of your queen genetic collection that is in your apiary. This is an example of a few years ago of my queen records. And again, I'm sure that other methods are available. So I'm showing you the origin of the hive, the origin of the queen, the mother. I'm grading the temper, and I'm making a note of the dates associated with the queen's development. So the queen records, I look on this as a bit of a family tree of my beekeeping journey. So knowing the provenance of your queens can help you plan where you're going. And also to show your assessors that you have a plan for that journey. There we are. Hive records, invaluable. Veterinary meds, that's legal. Honey records, so you're compliant with the Food Standards Agency, and your family tree. How have I done for time? Not too
That's
shabby.
excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, we
We'll
have
stop the sharing. Has everyone gone to sleep, or do people realise that record keeping is really interesting? Next time you're at an apiary meeting, get talking about them.
I thought your survey was really interesting, actually. I kept records under my hive roofs for one season, well, about 3 weeks, I think it was, before I decided they were too nibbled to be doing that. So they're not there anymore. Giles has got a question. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so just on the product records, you kept them at a hive level. I keep mine at the moment at an apiary level.
Right?
Typically when I'm taking supers off, well, I tend to take frames off. I tend to take, if I get a selection of cat frames, so I tend to do it at an apiary level. Is that a problem?
No, I don't think so. As long as you're showing which, I like to see which hives I am extracting honey from, but I think that is fine.
Okay,
It's
thank
just
you.
a
Yeah,
level of
I,
detail that
I tend to treat the veterinary records. I tend to treat every apiary at the same time as well. So so that should at least be consistent.
yeah.
Okay.
So you've got that the veterinary meds going right through the apiary, so you've got the same treatment going or residual treatment going through with your all your supers of honey. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think with the honey records and the queen records, I'm showing how I personally keep those records in order to show that I am that I am following appropriate procedures. It's not something we talk about. The BBKA hive records are very good as a basic, and then there's all these apps, but the other bits we don't tend to think about so much. Well, I mean, we think about it individually, but we don't think about it or discuss it in a group.
No, and in about 1906, a book was published that was for beekeepers to keep their records in, and that had sections for things like temperature, humidity. They paid a lot more attention to the weather, and they also
Right.
wrote down about the crops. And then it had a whole section for putting the value of their crops and the wax and things. And I thought that was really interesting, how they were much more motivated by beekeeping as an income, because that was an actual income for some of them.
Yes, yes. How interesting. When was that? Was that BBKA produced that, did you say?
No, I think it was Herod Hemsel.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
it somewhere. It's available as a PDF.
Mm,
But maybe we could put that there. But some of the records there are, nobody's actually interested in your pounds, shillings, and pence, as was recorded then.
no, no.
But Neville has asked a question: how many Varroa checks should you do through the year, record-wise?
Ah, thanks, Nev. I cannot. I mean, I think you would do for diseases. You would definitely do a thorough disease inspection at least twice a year, and then I think if you were starting to see problems, or you were looking for, you were coming to a time when you would be able to treat for Varroa, if you didn't have supers on, then you would do a preemptive check for Varroa then.
I'm just more thinking about for the assessment itself, really, showing them. We know we all go through the road checks after you off and things like that, but just to show your records, should you automatically say, right, I'll do one at the start of the season, take a note of it, do another one halfway through with a sugar shaker, and then 2 or 3 throughout the course of the year? I don't know. Is there a guide anywhere?
I'm not aware of a guide.
I think you should count for Varroa 4 times a year.
Right.
And you should think about counting before you treat. So you have to think about when you're going to treat and whether you're going to do a chemical treatment, which you would have to write down, or whether you're going to do some integrated pest management husbandry technique, and then write down what you're doing. So you could do a shook swarm with a frame left in for Varroa control. And when that's sealed, take that out and you've reduced the Varroa load. But it's about writing down what you do and making sure what you've done is reflected in your notes, and vice versa. So they will see what you say is there, not what you'd like to be there.
Right. It's just, I was asking really just for purposes of record keeping as much as anything, just to say, yeah, the idea is that you do one at the beginning of the season, record that one, go through and do another couple of sugar shakes or something through the course. And then, as you said, before you start the treatment. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Kate.
And Julian's written, he keeps his in a plastic clipboard under the folder, and that stops the nibbling. Peter in Cumbria has got a question. If he unmutes, we'll be able to hear him.
Yeah. On about the checking of for Varroa, what I do, I've in my brood box, I've got some super frames, so they automatically puts drone brood below the super frame. So every inspection, I'll use the hive to the pronged tool to pull them out and check on Varroa at that level. So I do it at every inspection, which is quite easy to do as part of your inspection.
Yes. So how many? You just have one super frame?
I put 2 in.
Two in, right?
Yeah. But I'm on brood and a half as well.
Right. Okay.
So there's plenty of room in there for it. But yeah, it's just quite easy then. So I cut them off to throw, as part of my Varroa, reducing Varroa.
Well, that's a very good and visible method in IPM, isn't it? So that you're ensuring that you're maintaining low levels. Yeah.
Thank you. And Izzy's got a question.
Okay, in your queen rearing records, which look really interesting, you had something about a queen that said SIPA. What did that stand for?
Oh, Izzy.
Oh, sorry. You can answer that another time. I was just very interested because it was an acronym, and I
I'm just
thought, now
having
what's
a
that?
look at that. Let's have a look. I think that was the source of that queen. I think that was back in 17 or 18, and I think
Right.
I acquired a queen from SIPA.
Okay, that's all right. Just interesting.
I'll have a look. Oh, here we are.
You can't say we didn't look carefully at the slides.
Heavens, you did. Yes, it was this. It was a second generation. So that was its grandmother. So the grandmother must have been 2016.
Right. Okay, thanks.
SIPA queen, and I can't now. It's the only queen I've ever bought.
Right, thank you. Stuart says, would you share your queen rearing record sheet or recommend one we can use? And maybe if you've got a blank one and it's something we could put on the learning platform, that would go nicely with your talk.
Yeah, I'll find one of those.
That'd be lovely. And
Certainly.
Linda's got her hand up. If you want to unmute.
Hi, yeah, I'm just looking at your queen cell date. Would you put that as the date the egg, the date the larvae, the date it was capped, the date you were expecting it to emerge? We're really testing you with your records now, aren't we?
Yes, I know, and I'm looking at them because I think I've changed my I've changed them since 2018, which is when I did these. So I think what I might do is yeah, I would think that say queen cell capped or something like that, or do I have eggs seen? No.
You have got eggs seen then later on. I think that's from the new queen, presumably.
Yes, I think I've adapted mine a little bit since this. And I think when I share one, I will probably expand that with my current one. But I just happen to have a nice little clear patch of filled out frames of on this bit of queen record. So I just did a screenshot of it. But well done for drilling down, my goodness me.
Thank you.
That's excellent. I don't think there are any more questions. So thank you, Kate. That has actually been really interesting and got us all thinking about how we keep our hive records and, more importantly, perhaps where we keep them. So thank you.
Well, it's been lovely to share it.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Good night, everyone. Thank you both to Peter as well, who's had to go and collect his wife from the station, I think. And thank you to Kate. They've been great talks this evening. So more great information for GH26. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Pleasure.